Right? You learn how letters form words and how to spell. You see what I mean? Like you learn these basic things, which is just that, whatever. But you rarely learn how computers work. But you have to use them all the time, right? They're appliances. They're like, I don't know how a typewriter worked. Well, kind of, hit
Hmm.
the thing, and a little lever. I don't know. But every time you look into these inventions, like they're really complicated and they took forever to figure out. But that's another topic, right? But you
Yeah.
don't know you need to know how a typewriter works, but do you not need to know how a computer
Like
works? Jack, how's
happy
it
Tuesday.
going? Hey,
Happy Tuesday.
it's Tuesday, and I hope you got out yesterday because it was beautiful. I did.
Yeah.
I got to ride my bike finally, so I'm pretty happy to imagine that being back is a thing I can do.
Yeah, yeah. We were in the 60s, in March, which is not too bad. Yeah.
Not bad at all. And we had a St. Patrick's Day parade, which I guess is coming up, right? And my son's getting married in a couple weeks, so there's that. That's going to
Oh,
be intense.
congratulations.
I know. Thank you. Didn't know if I mentioned it before, but yeah, it's a party that I'm attending, but I'm also hosting a after what do they call it? A brunch. So I have to cook a lot.
Hmm.
Um, which is fun because I like to cook. So no
Yeah,
biggie.
sounds like an occasion for a good cigar too, right?
I hope so. I mean, I tend to wish I could relax at parties, but honestly, when there's work to be done and you're a host, I can't. But if I'm a guest at another party, I am the guy sitting back and enjoying. In fact, I just got a bunch of new cigars and a really cool lighter, which I was surprised because usually they send you these lighters and they're always these kind of butane
Yeah,
lighters, and for some reason I have the worst luck.
yeah. They never work. Yeah, they never work.
They thank you. Okay, they never work, and I'm sitting there like, how hard is it in this world of technology? Anyway, so it's a new lighter, and so far it does work, but even better, it has a built-in V cutter. So all you people out there who don't have their V cutters lying around,
Hmm. But
it's
that,
makes a big difference.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm pretty
yeah.
happy. So new cigars, new lighter, and we'll have to get together for I did see this thing on Woodstock, speaking of which, the basically the western suburbs and Woodstock is a little shining jewel of being way the hell out there, but also nice. So it seems like you've chosen well. A lot of historic stuff other than
Hmm.
Groundhog Day, I guess, is there. And there's apparently a train museum near you,
Yeah,
which
in Union, yes, Union, very nice. Lots of things to look at. So we try to go there like once a year, and
oh
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I thought it looked kind of fun because you get to ride the trains, which is pretty cool, I think.
yeah, yeah. And then in the same general area, they also have like an kind of like an old car, like vintage car shows.
Okay.
So yeah. So it's a very little kind of place, not a township probably even, but they have events that are worth going to.
Well, it's a big history of railroads, and apparently, when you leave these things by the side of the road and just say, Anybody want this?" I guess that's how it works, right?
Hmm.
The ephemera. Speaking of which, it's still your duty. You're duty bound to get out to House on the Rock. I was just watching
Hmm.
a YouTube video of someone going through it, and it was interesting just because I had the best thing is to not have any idea of what House on the Rock is still. So it's like a
Hmm.
spoiler alert. But
Hmm.
as I was going through this video, it just was funny because you kind of can relive this thing and that, it's interesting to relive it because it made quite an impression upon me and still does. Love it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I
House on
still
the
have to
Rock,
kind of find time to go there. Yeah.
you do, and I think you're not terribly far. You could probably make it a day trip, honestly, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, easily. Yeah.
Yeah, or whatever. So AI, crazy topic, right? That we
Hmm.
talk about. And I had an interesting week of my sister-in-law, who's very into AI, and maybe even listens to this. So hi, Katie, if you're listening. Anyway,
Yeah. Hello.
was taking seriously and I don't know why everyone has such weird names, but it's the CEO of Anthropic. I still forget his name, but either way, he's like all these people. Where do they get these names?
Dario Amadei.
Thank you. That's awesome. I appreciate that you have that in you because I've written it many times and I've not pronounced it out loud, maybe for the same reason of like, what? Okay, so not making fun of people's names, but it is a hard name for me to remember because it's unusual, I guess. In any case, so I wrote about this very interesting confabulation. I guess that's what it's called. I don't know.
Confabulation.
Conflation? I don't know. So the joke is, and I don't know if you read it, because I also want to talk about your system two. It's going to lead into your system two paper. Okay. So just to go into system one and system two. So the long story short is I had to pass this training that they make everyone go through to make the world a better place and to, tick the box for, that you can be responsible for young adults as I am and not be mean to them. I know.
Very
And
good. Yeah, I feel
thankfully,
a difference in the air already.
it only took 3 hours, but at the same time, I have passed this before because it's not hard to pass and it's very time consuming because you can't skip anything. And even worse, it's one of those things that if you really tried to understand it, it's just endless amounts of stuff. Anyway, so like any good person, hopefully lazy person, I turned it down as low as it would go and tried to do something else for 3 hours because it was overdue. So it's this thing of like, it's going to be on in the background and you have to prompt it every once in a while, right? There's going to be a literal 5 to 10 minute video of people in terrible situations being mean to each other, and you're supposed to help them, be better and nicer. So either way, it's this, and I don't know if I'm making fun of this, but I've been through this evolution of training, and they've gotten so much better because it used to be you could just skip everything. And it also used to be there was only text. It's kind of like education, right? Now education is kind of all videos, I think, because nobody's going to sit there and like read a book, and anyway.
Well, it's all canvas, right? So it's all about kind of clicking on the quizzes and moving to the next unit. I think there could be videos there, but that I think if you are lucky.
Exactly. And the videos, of course, I think in my class, I made a lot of videos, but then I read a guide. It's like, don't make your videos any longer than 5 minutes. And most of mine are like our video, which is like way too long for anyone to keep an attention span going. So I get it. We live in, this place. So either way, I have no patience and no attention span, but I can't skip it. So now this is the new T2 of training modules, right? Like it's impossible to not succumb to their rules, as much as you might try. So I went and I read that piece that this guy wrote about how terrible AI is and how it's going to take over the world and make us all into bioterrorists and other terrible things that we're going to do because we couldn't do that before, right? You'd have to go to a library or study or something to be a horrible person. You'd have to really work hard at it. And now, AI makes it really easy to be a horrible person, right? It'll tell you what to do if we didn't have ethics training in it. So you're getting the thread so far, right? So the ethics training of Anthropic was what was the guy refused. I'm like, we can't take away this ethics training because otherwise you would just have this go off and kill people randomly, which is ML, by the way, right? I mean, it's not generative to go off and kill people.
Yeah, and it's not personal, right? I mean, you have to kind of realize that, that the AI is just going to optimize towards the objectives, right? And if it involves doing some bad things, it's not going to be personal. So we shouldn't be worried too much.
Well, and I think there's the weird upside, right? Like for us, we're not worried too much, but we just saw, and the other story I've not written about is how the main story is AI goes and mines Bitcoin in order to and escapes its shackles in training. And I don't know if you saw this one, but like you just said, it's just a bad motivator was given to this thing, and it figured out how to use this GPU to solve the problem it was given, which is to optimize, right? It was asked to optimize itself or something like that, right? So it goes off and it figures out, not figures out, but it gets this little Bitcoin mining thing, and SSH is out of its shell. And to just anyone who doesn't care about that stuff, it just means whatever, right? Computers, we both know, run on a couple of config files, which are just some text somewhere that tells, so and so what to do, right? It's not complicated, but it has interesting permutations, because if you know that config file is there, you can overwrite the config file.
Yeah.
htaccess. It's a big file that nobody even knows it's there, but it runs everything, right? It's the way computers are, right? Just because.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
so it figured its way out. It was badly motivated. Now it's trying to escape the shackles and take over. So it's the same, kind of the same story if you want, right? Like, no, it wasn't trying to do anything. And also Bitcoin mining, the worst way on earth to make money, right? Because they're not going to make any money because that's the nature of it, right? But it sounds good. It sounds threatening, right? So back to me watching this thing, or skipping through, trying to get through 3 hours of this, 3 solid hours, really. It's pretty intense. So I was dissatisfied with, what was his name again? Anthropic?
Dario.
Dario, like Mario, right? He's like a little mustache
exactly.
guy. Okay, I got it. Now I can do it. Okay. So Dario was sort of painting the authoritative worst case scenario, and I wasn't buying it. But then I sent you this other video, and I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but I like this guy, 3 Blue 1 Brown or whatever. He's a very affable YouTuber who does basically mathematics stuff, and it's fun because a lot of mathematics can be visual now, where it used to not be in your books. It was kind of dry. And so now you get to see a thing in real dimensions or being, visualized, and it makes more sense. Fourier transforms make a lot of sense visually, and they don't make any sense, as numbers, because it's all about rotations and all sorts of cool stuff that you can see. So his point, did you get a chance to watch it, by the way?
A while ago, so you will have to remind me.
Okay. Well, again, not the biggest math guy. This was more what was interesting, and talked about higher dimensions. Okay, so we talked about 3 dimensions. Yeah. Okay, so he was just bringing up this dimension thing, and because it was a lecture and there was a bunch of people there, it was kind of a more like there was a good hook to it. It's like, oh, and you won't believe what'll happen, so and so. So the point is once you get into more dimensions, rather than having more stuff to do, you actually have less stuff to do. And the reason I brought this up for AI is because it really did change my mind, because I thought about this idea of me being bored and not wanting to do this thing, and the idea of boredom is actually sort of built into generative AI. Like, it also gets bored. And so after a certain amount of times, it'll just collapse into probably just being nice, right? Or whatever, but it will not continue to grow in its abilities. It actually will get more brittle and more like tuned because it's chosen its path, basically. And if you think of these dimensions as being the lattice work of neural nets, right? Or whatever, right? It's all lattice work that leads you to a couple of fun things. So here's the thing is if AI does get bored, and you can debate me on any of these ideas, but it was interesting that it also wouldn't be the perfect companion to maybe these big tokens that we used to think about, right? Like if you had a token that was long, it could just take everything in. I think it would start to mimic real life, which is that we just start ignoring stuff, right? Or we'd system one our way through everything. And maybe I can open it up to the work you've been working on, right? Like is system one, so for Kahneman fans out there, system one is just reaction, like you just are tuned to heuristic
Yeah.
behavior, and it's easy. It's not
Yeah.
energy intensive. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's basically kind of like a chat system, right? Like, question answer kind of. There might be some stuff under the hood, but yeah, system one is basically, it's just conversational. Maybe, a little bit better than Eliza, but still, the same idea.
Well, and it governs, I would say, a pretty huge majority of things, right? System one is not considered bad, but it is considered a little bit bad in Kahneman's view because it also leads us to making some pretty big misjudgments about things, right? We overemphasize things because we heard at one point XYZ, we continue to believe XYZ. So we've got those like anti-Bayesian forces or something where it's like we're not supposed to think about it, we just do it, and then whatever. Yeah. So again, criticism wise, I don't think he's mad about it, but it was his, made for a good book title, right? Thinking Fast and Slow. Is that it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because there's a question of memory, right? Like what you should be remembering. What is the recall, kind of time horizon, right? These kind of things. So there is the knowledge issue, right? And then there is also the, something that we have very difficult kind of internally as humans to kind of realize, but what's our thought process, right? I mean, are we, when we are talking, are we planning, or is that just purely kind of reactive, or are we maybe kind of looking at some sort of maybe a little bit of a logic here, right? Like, maybe, kind of thinking, kind of at the back of our head about logic, or are we thinking maybe a little bit about, like a fuzzy systems, like, hey, it's not exactly this, but maybe it's close. So I'm going to take the other thing that is close so that I'm going to be a little bit more maybe funny or something, right? So there's this the fuzziness. And then maybe in human brain, there is more than one areas that think. And then whatever we kind of get out, in writing or in speech, it's just a synthesis of a multi-agent system, and they all kind of do different things. So system one seems like a kind of a good first step, but maybe not the end of the story, right?
Well, it's as I said, or not as I said, and I agree with you that what makes it interesting in mimic terms, right? So we could take a step backward and just kind of look at computing. Remember, this is not that old of a discipline, I was watching some old Apple stuff about Wozniak and Steve Jobs, and I'm thinking, this was pretty fringe not that long ago, So, for most people, and even now, someone was saying like, oh, if you were just a little bit older, you would have learned a lot of stuff that you don't really need anymore, in some ways, right? You'd learn a lot of, like I said, about these config files that seem amusing to me, but most people don't even know they're there, right? They're used to things having a very high level of what you and I both like is that we have these interfaces that make things a lot easier for us, and we didn't have to do all the work keeping these things fed. But I also thought that keep people out. So remember, you had to go to school and you had to get degrees and you have to be taught, and you would separate yourself. So let's say you've been working with the legal profession, right? So in the legal profession, you've got a whole bunch of different educational options, I'm assuming, right? You get to learn case law and you might focus on some kind of law or whatever. Like I'm certain there's tons and tons of complexity to learning law. And then, of course, being able to practice it is even more interesting because then you're looking for money. Who's got money, and et cetera, et cetera. That's all. And then there's some things where we just assume legality happens, like in criminal things, right? That is a world. But I drove by the place on my bike ride, and it's like DUI, come on in, that kind of place. It just, here's some lawyers. They sit there next to the court, and I guess if you didn't know anything about it, you'd walk in and they'd say, okay, whatever they would do. So there's lots of range in that. But what I'm assuming is not many of those people, if maybe few or none of them, really understand computers that well, right? It's not their jam, right? So I was just saying, between these two things, and we can go into medicine, here's another one, probably knows little or nothing about computers. You see what I mean? Like, these are highly educated people that probably never had to go through computing education at all, right? Like, they probably will never given any. I always think, like, kids nowadays, you know kids nowadays, darn kids, but that you would go to school at any grade and not learn to code. You know what I mean? Like, it seems to me like you would just need to learn that in general. Right, you learn how letters form words and how to spell. You see what I mean? Like, you learn these basic things, which is just that, whatever. But you rarely learn how computers work. But you have to use them all the time, right? They're appliances. They're like, I don't know how a typewriter worked. Well, kind of, hit the thing, and a little lever. I don't know. But every time you look into these inventions, like, they're really complicated and they took forever to figure out. But that's another topic, right? But you don't know, you need to know how a typewriter works, but do you not need to know how a computer works? So maybe sidebar, I don't know, do you think this has any, because I think we're very small subculture, and I think AI is sort of the thing now that, like, most people should be able to get their heads around, right? Like, you don't need to know how a computer works to take advantage of the abilities of an AI.
Yeah, and absolutely. And now we are adding another layer, which is, we have a computer that has its own OS. Now it's going to be increasingly more AI-ish in its operation. And then you have something that is, Dario kind of, being terrified of, which is that, so we have those LLMs and, then, how do we train them? Should we have a data set that will have some sort of ethics in it, right? Or not? And even if we do, that may not be enough. And that was the kind of the major issue with the State Department or DOD, I think, which was that, they asked Dario to remove the constraints from Anthropic models. And
as if it was removable, right?
Well, so that's what I wanted to kind of talk about, right? So, like, what constraints? Like, you might have like a system prompt on Anthropic's models, like everybody else says, like, don't talk about poisons. If there's a question about poisons, don't answer, right? If there's a question about some sort of a violence related issue, don't answer, right? So they will have that, right? So this is just like a text file that you can just hit delete, right? And then you have a totally unconstrained model, right? So we are
which then is really useful to somebody. And I would keep thinking, you're using Anthropic, that blew me away. Like, what do you use it for, right? Like,
yeah. So
are you doing our tax returns with it? I doubt it, right?
Exactly. So you would think that we are dealing with kind of like serious people, like you have the State Department or whatever, or some sort of governmental agency that is willing
to government workers.
All great. But they are willing to spend billions and billions on AI, nowadays, right? And then you have like Anthropic or other company that they are also kind of their valuation is in the maybe billions again, if not trillions, right? And then they're gonna start like they're going to start like a conflict about a text file, right? That is just basically a something like a piece of text with system prompts that can be deleted, right?
Sorry, Jack, it's
With
another
a
config file. Like, what
yeah,
the hell?
exactly. It's the form of AI conflict file, right? And yeah, maybe there is a little bit of secret sauce that went into training because maybe Dario put like a Plato or Aristotle or some other Wikipedia kind of
Double
like
super
pieces.
secret. Yeah, there's.
Yeah, yeah. And then you have an open AI guy that kind of looks at this, and they say, oh yeah, we will do it. Hit delete.
Right.
Here's
Yeah.
your
Well, that's the
GPT.
thing.
So so yeah, and so yeah, I don't know if this is kind of like being idealistic on the part of Dario, that he doesn't want to think about the little technical stuff like like the config files, or there is kind of like a smoke screens going on here and there. But yeah, I totally don't understand what was happening. But the fact remains that there is plenty of other LLMs that you can just use instead of Anthropics, and just jailbreak them in 5 minutes if they refuse to remove the system prompts. Yeah, so yeah, this is kind of maybe something related to the realization that like not everybody knows about the Windows registry, right? Like not everybody knows, but it's just basically a collection of text files. And if you install something, that maybe like a serial number will go there, right? And you can find it if you really want it, in 5 minutes. But maybe there's the same stuff going on with AI. Like, okay, so we train LLMs out of the box. They're gonna optimize, and they're gonna be like Terminators, like out of the box. Not because they are mean, right? It's just because they're gonna be optimizing towards a goal, right? And the goal may not be ethical in itself, or there
Well,
might be
and
a
and
shortcut.
we're goal creators, right? So here we
Yeah,
are as humans
yeah,
with our system one, and we're like, I do it every day, right? I need this one little problem solved. How should I do it? And it will tell me something. And usually
yeah,
it's like, okay, that's fine, right? Like these are just little like what do they call it? Just greasing the path, sort of, that
yeah,
I don't have to spend as much time Googling or whatever the hell I used to do. And maybe I just skip Googling, or something like that, right? Like I want it put together for me. And I like it because it mentions calling me by name and remembering where I live. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
it's even more ingratiating programmatically. But yes, it is a config file, and you're getting the humor, I hope, of me doing my ethics training, which I am not doing because I'm too lazy to do it. And then I think what we're getting at, or at least I don't know if you agree, but I'm sort of seeing this dimensionality as being the more interesting thing, which is it doesn't scale. And to our credit, and maybe Kahneman's credit, my um, advice to people who worked for me and to myself and my students, because I'm just getting into this, is like, it's going to take time. That's my big advice. Like, you're going to do something, just do it, let it sit, come back to it, look at it. You see what I mean? Like, don't try to one shot things. And maybe that's where we can turn, because I kind of think that AI, as it's designed right now, and maybe as it's successful right now, has to one shot everything, because dimensions won't grow, right? It gets a little better, but then it'll collapse. And this is the fifth, I think it's the sixth dimension. Once you get to 6 layers of dimensionality, you've already cut yourself off from so much that you can't go back. And that's the thing, is this is a fake thing that we invented, right? This isn't real life, where we can actually recontextualize things a lot easier because we live in the real world and run into people and have wonderful discussions with your friends like Jack. You know what I mean? Like, recontextualization, not our biggest problem. In fact, some will say it's attention deficit, right? We're constantly recontextualizing everything, and we see that as a problem, right? But here's AI, it won't recontextualize things past a certain point. because the math says no.
Yeah, well, maybe we can kind of spend a little bit of time kind of explaining what is one shot, what it means in the context of AI versus multi-shot, right? So essentially, one shot or versus multi-shot means that, well, you need to give AI some context, right? So how do you provide ethics? Maybe that context can be represented in a like Robert Ludlum's novel, right? Like, hey, I don't really know what ethics is too well, but there is this Jason Bourne character in the, let's say, in the very first novel, which where he is vulnerable. He is kind of like a higher hitman, but he kind of get his mental breakdown, and he becomes kind of nicer guy and kind of very honorable and very kind of vulnerable, and he's gonna kind of do bad things only if you are bad, but he's not gonna do bad things to good people, that kind of thing, right? So there you go. So here maybe that's the ethical context. You're gonna feed the entire novel, which you now can, into the context window of an LLM, and maybe the LLM was gonna understand, like, hey, maybe this is a good guy, right? I mean, maybe Jason Bourne is a good guy, right? And then maybe we should kind of, because he tells the truth, he is honorable, he's not gonna kind of like stick the knife in your back, figure out level,
Unless you deserve it.
unless you deserve it, right? So, so that's there, right? Okay, so that would be more one shot, right? Let's say there is a consistent archetype of ethics in, let's say, that resource. But so what you can do next is, okay, well, what if I do multi-shot? Like, what if I provide second and third example? So maybe that's going to be Tom Clancy novel, right? Where, you have Jack Ryan character, and Jack Ryan is definitely even nicer than Jason Bourne. He's, he he is going to
Bookworm.
be,
Yeah,
bookworm,
only does pyrotechnics by accident, whatever.
And facing with grave danger, he's going to behave like a special forces operator. He's going to kind of go after the bad, terrorists.
System 2 up there,
But bookworm, first, and an analyst, right? So you have two shots now, and then maybe the AI is going to be able to create a synthesis of these two guys, and gonna say, oh, if you behave like these two guys taken together, you will have an ethical system that is going to be consistent and work well. Now, the new thing that is happening right now is the recursive learning, where you would, let's say, you will say, take the Ludlum's novel. You will let the AI kind of figure out the main points. Let's say this is about ethics, right? So you're asking a question about ethics. So the AI is going to infer all the ethical characters of that archetype, characteristics of that archetype, stick it in the context as a new knowledge. And then, so you have the novel, you have the extraction, the new knowledge that was extracted by the LLM during the learning process, and then on top of that, you will get the Tom Clancy novel. So now you have three things, but one of those things is whatever the AI has learned. So that is the next big thing. This is the recursive learning, where we are hoping that. And that kind of shows up in experiments, that the AI is going to get even better results, quote unquote better, like maybe in math, maybe in problem solving. So this is kind of getting a little bit convoluted now, but I mean, but now you have those huge inputs that you can provide to those AIs, right? You can put a novel or two or five. You can have millions of words that go into the LLM, and hoping that whatever comes out is something that you would expect to be, okay, right? Nice, useful, constructive. Yeah.
I think what I'm getting from, and I think you're very engaged in this, and I think and maybe I'm going to mischaracterize it, but what I'm saying is I think it's all system one. I think the whole point of AI is and maybe this is a little tangent, but I keep thinking about and asking about, like, if you only had some constraints, you know what I mean? I still think that AI at some point, maybe it'll be a year from now or whatever, they'll be like, this isn't worth answering. Go figure it out yourself. You know what I mean? Like, there needs to be this thing of like, the amount of cost it's going to take me to give you this answer isn't worth the cost of the answer. Basically human behavior, right? Like, I'm not, you don't get experts at your beck and call that do whatever you want 24/7, right? They definitely don't do that. Although, thank you to some people on Reddit that I'm trying to get some feedback on my book, and I'm like, oh, it's nice that you looked at it. You know what I mean? Like, a human's time is very hard to get.
Yes, so let's maybe kind of now interject, what a system 2 would be, right? Because
well, that's what I
one,
mean. It's got to conserve energy. It's got to be like, I'm not going to do it.
So architecturally, system 1, was kind of like a question answer, kind of like a probabilistic retrieval from the neural network, right? So that kind of was nice. GPT kind of made the name kind of doing that. Now, system 2 would be that. Okay, so now, so if you ask a question to a system 2 like AI, it's not going to go directly to next token generation to provide an answer to you. It's going to start a bunch of processes. So it will know that, oh, here's the question. So now I will develop a plan how to answer the question. So I'm going to maybe kind of look at the database, maybe look at the Reddit posts, maybe I'm going to look at my own memory inside the neural network, maybe I'm going to look at some, Google Scholar to kind of get the papers, right? So it's going to start organizing like a sequence of steps that lead towards the answer, and that is the system 2 in a nutshell, right? Like, providing a plan, then whatever comes out, it will try to self-evaluate. So it will create a rubric that will be generatively, so kind of built, within the flow of the answer. It will create a rubric that is going to try to evaluate, like compatible with the topic, right? And then it will use the same LLM to actually, apply the rubric to the answer that was generated or to the plan that was generated, so that it can evaluate itself, right? And if it's satisfied, it will provide you an answer. If it is not satisfied, it will kind of, regenerate the plan and kind of do some optimization. So all this, what I'm talking about, will be happening during the, a few seconds it takes to actually provide an answer. So it's while it might be still thinking while it's streaming the answer to your screen, right? So that is system 2, and that is the game changer that I think many people are afraid of, because of the what happens if AGI, right, artificial general intelligence happens, or super intelligence or whatever. So that is the system 2, right? So there's clearly a lot more inference in front of before the answer kind of gets to your screen.
Well, I think you pointed out, and we're back into the world of my little journey, and now you start to see the ethical training. I hopefully as it is, which is trying to, but not succeeding at, answering a very hard question in the easiest way possible, right? So there's laws, rules, etc., and norms, but all of these situations where this would actually happen are more complicated unless you retrain your system 1, to not be tired, belligerent, lacking empathy. All the things that we do, right? That we don't really do. We don't want to do them, but we do them anyway because they're easier, right? And so this is the difference between a Kaczynski style and your basic person, I think, that Dario is worried about, right? Like, that I don't have any real interest in this. I just played this video game where I had to kill off like 50 people to get to my goal, and I'm now a calloused mass murderer that I want to do it in another way, and I want this AI to help me. Comes into play where, yes, you can say don't do that, right? Like, your response, see, this is the problem, is that they're really there is no reason that an AI shouldn't respond. Much like we have computers, they don't deliberately disobey us. It's against their nature, right? But we're terrible, and therefore we design things that don't clean up the memory properly. I mean, have you looked at computers lately? What does it take? Like 50 gigabytes to just run a program anymore? You know,
Yeah,
and I'm like,
exactly.
wait a second. We were in this thing where we barely had 16 meg to work with, and
Yeah.
all of these problems were solved, right? You know, all of these architectures, all these config files were written because they only took up 1K of space, you know. But now you couldn't fathom anything. Even my browser windows are running at gigabytes of storage to just
Yeah.
render, you know, some text on a screen. Or I don't know what they're doing, to be quite honest. In fact, I'm trying to go through and shut all them down because I'm sort of like in my computer world or my device world. I don't worry about it because it just doesn't expose that to me very often,
Mhm.
right? Like good for us or good for whoever invented mobile, but you know what I mean? It never exposes you to any of this complexity that computers have. But it's still there, right? They're just computers too. You know, just like yeah.
Maybe even let's kind of call it maybe a little bit more precisely inefficiencies, right? I mean, the fact that
Oh,
your
yeah.
browser is taking 16 gigabytes of RAM, to display like an empty page, that is not exactly kind of the not exactly right. And I think there is operating systems or there is software that is a little bit better than some others, but still, and the same situation is happening with the AI. Now we are kind of observing that the AI models are kind of getting smaller and smaller, and the quality of the token that kind of comes back to us is getting higher and higher. The intelligence or the utility is kind of improving, right? So in other words, if you wanted to have AI to generate a really funny joke, maybe a year or two ago, you needed, 400 billion parameters. I work with a model like that required, that was the Llama 400B. It required like four H100 GPUs or more, and you have to quantize it, and now, even a better joke maybe will come back, from a model that is only a 7B, right? And pretty soon, that kind of a model that will tell you a great joke is going to be on your phone, right? So we are kind of getting into maybe optimizations that are kind of resulting from the matrix multiplication, elegant mathematical kind of underpinning of the AI, whereas the browsers will still require 16 gig of RAM to display an empty page, right? So this is kind of getting interesting because the AI is more mathematical than computer science, I think, and that's kind of
Hmm.
like an interesting view.
Well, or just in my own mania, it's starting to be more like a model, right? It's a model of things that exist this way. And this is where I'm getting into our system one and system two, which is that if not encouraged or if not for conservation of energy, like our system two should be what we rely upon more because it's less energy intensive, but it's more time and focus intensive, right? Like you can't forget about it. You might have to think it over or do any of the things that you might have to do to actually exercise your system to do some research. Or my favorite thing out of all of my explorations is, you got binary, you've got a yes and a no, or you got to do nothing. That's the new one. It's like you could go yes or no or decide to do nothing, which seems to me like a more interesting branch. And I think that's still my thought process is that having an always on, always, what you would want to call it, any of these agentic style AIs, are ultimately they're gonna fail because they're gonna get bored. They're going to run out of things to do because they don't have anything to gauge their own energy use, right? Like they don't have, well, they can, and that's maybe, here's our award-winning, idea, right? Is that if they could say, no, this is too energy intensive, but this answering this problem for you, it's not a problem worth going into, right? Like this is a non-issue, which is what we say to each other constantly, right? Not my problem. Right? We're really good at this of like being in and out of things that aren't, that are problems. And I mean, if you look writ large, right, we're always pointing out problems, but we rarely point out solutions, right? We just point out, activities toward vague goals, and sometimes they stick around for long enough for us to remember them, and sometimes they're gone fast enough that we forget. I think the current oil price sort of gets me, because it's like, wait, it was just a year ago, it was it's like it's this amount today, and that's down from where it was, is the story, not that it was something at one point, right? And I think so I've got my three and maybe we're getting out of time, but here's my three things that AI can never do. One, it cannot understand time. So that's a fatal flaw, right? Because that's at least one thing we're really good at, right? Like, kind of, right? We remember things contextually in some sort of timeline, whereas AI collapses that, and it really can't, right? Like, I mean, it literally can't. It does not have the ability to understand time. And I was going to say the other one is it does not understand energy cost, right? So it's never going to sufficiently take care of itself anytime soon and move out of the house and stop being such a burden, right? It's going to, it's just going to burn as much energy as to fulfill its mandate, right, of us talking to it until you run out of money or whatever, right? Because I was developing some things in my little coding environment, and I ran out of tokens, and I didn't want to pay for more, but I also had no ability to kind of do it myself because I just didn't want to get in there and do it. So I'm like, I must get more tokens so that it can go and remind me of what the command is to do npm to do what. You know what I mean? Like I used to have a book, like you, right? You have a book of all your npm commands, right? So when you forgot them, you're just sitting there. I had my little JavaScript book, it's like, I can't remember all these methods. You had dictionaries. We used to, not remember words, what words meant. We had to look them up. And to me, the beauty of that, and then I had a third one I forgot. But either way, what do you think of those two? Do you have any, you want to set me straight? Because I'm usually wrong about this.
No, I think, I don't know, never say never, right? But I kind of agree. There was an interesting story a few days ago, because OpenAI published a brand new model, like GPT 5 whatever, 4 or 3 or whatever, some, brand new stuff, right? And somebody kind of asked a question to that brand new model that is supposed to be like the best of the best, right? And the question was, hey, I need to take my car to a car wash. That car wash is only a block away. Should I drive or should I walk, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, I heard this one.
Right. Yeah. And the latest and greatest model said, you should walk.
100%. You need to get out and get your get your legs stretched. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So the concept of time, spatial reasoning, something that was called a while ago in the AI circles like naive physics, like, if you have a cup and you drop it on the floor, is it going to break? Yes, it's probably going to break, that kind of thing. So they called it naive physics. So all these things are very difficult for the AIs to do. And
it shouldn't. Yeah. I'm not saying it even should, right? Like, choose your battles, for God's sake. Sorry, keep going, right?
Yeah. So the time, the spatial and time relationships are indeed very, very, very hard. What I can, however, kind of put on top of this is that we are talking about, again, system one. That was a system one question, the car wash, that was a system one question. Now, if I ask the same question to say system two, which instead of focusing on generating a sentence that is an answer, it would focus on generating a plan, how to build an answer, right? And then focus on asking the LLM to create a rubric, and then ask the LLM to evaluate, maybe a pool, of answer, or evaluate the plan. that wouldn't be the case, right? So the AI would be able to self-correct itself, like the logical contradiction here. So in a way, I think that maybe a safer thing to say would be that the LLM as an architecture that operates only in one shot is going to have problems with time and spatial and all that stuff. But an AI operating as a reasoning machine where the objective is not just the sentence of an answer or a number or an equation, but it's kind of like the process, where you have introspection into steps, then I think it will have a much higher capabilities. But it's not just going to be the LLM, right? The LLM is going to be just the kernel, and then everything else is going to be kind of sitting around it.
Well, I agree with you as well. I think there's something really interesting about any of these meta architectures, right? Like, because also you would need in some ways, and I think the great fun that's happening now, I'm not sure if Anthropic's having fun or OpenAI is having fun or something, but it's the use case scenarios, right? Like I remember consulting to so many places that all wanted to have some sort of a free text search, right? And free text search, for anyone who doesn't know what that means, is the worst problem on earth, right? Like, it is just awful. And especially if you have a very finite amount of information, which everything has, right? Compared to Google, I guess, right? Like you need a somewhat like an LLM, right? You need some sort of insurmountable amount of info to make free text work, because let's say you had a model that only knew about baking. Well, you're going to ask it, law questions, and it's going to answer them. You know what I mean? Like, it will be also to many fairly convincing. You know what I mean? Even though it only knows about baking, it knows enough about communicating, probably, to be reasonable, just like a person would. And just like we do, when someone asks you something you have no idea of, you make it up anyway. You know what I mean? Like, you don't say, oh, no, not anything, no, nothing to do with me. In fact, you have so many opinions about things that have literally nothing to do with us. The other day I was chastised. It was kind of funny because someone said, oh, I went and voted. And I was like, oh, right. We have this election coming up. But this election is a primary election, which, as to my other point, is the worst kinds of elections, because now you have to actually decide who gets on the ballot. Okay. And the person was like, let's just not talk about it. Let's just not talk. And I was like, well, but weirdly, this is the most important election. That this is the time you actually make a difference, because you are limiting the amount of choices. And if you don't think all of this is part of a big planned out discussion, right, Jack? It's these amount of choices getting smaller that is the negative, right? Like having the width and bandwidth to answer any question and be the oracle gets old quickly, right? And without metacognition, it gets brittler. But so do we. But we get by, right? Like we're not any different, and that's why it's fun to sort of look at these two systems. Like, the more you look into LLMs, or even if you go back to just plain old machine learning, right? Like, it would at a certain point find it hard to extrapolate the next movie star, right? Like, you could give it a Chalamet and it's going to be like, look at all these Chalamets I found. Do you see what I mean? Like, because of the whatever of this of the way this works. And I actually looked at my bio that I put in at one point, and was so proud that if you looked me up in Google, that I am most of the results. And I thought that was like flexing, right? Like, oh, in terms of Michael Danes out there, you know what I mean? And don't even talk about Jack Brzezinski's, because I still just learned how to spell your name. But I'm sure you're most of the results, right? Because you're kind of singular, and you've been around for long enough, I guess, that we get to be weighted as being useful. But you see what I mean? All of that is kind of an illusion, really, right? Like, there's probably a much better Michael Dane out there that just can't get any traction, because they're just not the one that's been around long enough. You see what I mean? So machine learning and LLMs can't go to the next step. You see what I mean? Because we want the new Chalamet. We just don't know what he looks like or she looks like, right? But we know that's what we want, but we can't articulate it. We can't search for it because, you know what I mean? It's like, no, I saw this person and they were in this film. And then I'm like, oh, they're the next Chalamet because I got this insight into this thing. So even what I'm saying, you know, well, I'll take it back because that one's pretty big, right? The point is that these meaningful outcomes, I still think, you know, the thing we should try to do with LLMs is make them understand their energy usage. And I just mean like, you know, how much effort is needed to answer this question. Yeah. And then say, no, you know, I'm busy. Come back later. Because that's what happens when you're not on the paid tier anyway, right? It's like, here, you get the cool model. Oh, no, not anymore. Now you get the crappy model. And I can never tell the difference because I'm like, so what? You know, I'm just looking for how, you know, what's the sod that I should use in my backyard to fix my bad grass or something like that, you know? So hopefully no one's out there asking it how to end human civilization, and it's telling it, and they're working on it right now. You know, maybe Jason Bourne can stop them, you know, somehow with their super abilities. Anyway, sorry, I rambled, and you know how it is. Getting toward the end, there's always that wanting to rush in a new topic, Jack. But did we solve everything? We did, right?
Yeah, I think we just kind of we are pretty good at solving big problems. So I think we just have to come up with the next one for the next meeting.
Easy enough. Can't wait.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Mike. That was great. I'm sure that the Anthropic saga is going to continue, you know, until, you know, they gonna come up with some sort of a compromise. So we're gonna allow, you know, Jack Ryan's, but not Jason Bourne's.
Business leadership should be their own, you know, superhero. Do they have one of those yet? You know, it's like the board member who saved the day. Like, why don't they get a novel series? You know what I mean?
Well, it used to be kind of like, you know, like in the time of great wars, you know, that, you know, used to be those, you know, characters like Winston Churchill, you know, that they were kind of idolized.
That is true. No, they did. There were some very heroic. Well, that's what I guess you're right. Is now it's just a sort of someone was asking like, why was Alexander the Great called the Great, whereas like Attila the Hun was not, or something like that, you know? And it's like, well, apparently, while he killed a lot of people, he just didn't kill as many people. So this is always the thing, right? He was a little nicer, and still deadly. So there you go. You get to be remembered.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, there's some stories about World War II, right, that we can maybe get into a little bit, because
let's do it.
You know,
absolutely, we're learning.
Because, you know, what was the ethical kind of like consequence of, let's say, cracking the Enigma code, right? Cracking the Enigma code enabled you know, the Allies to listen to every single conversation that the Germans thought is 100% secure. But then they had to kind of like hide the fact that they cracked the Enigma code.
Yes. So, you had to put people at risk, even though, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we got to talk later because I got to run to the bathroom.
All right.
Cheers.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Cheers, Jack. Bye.
Bye.